We are back again with another topic for nanoeconomics, and that is the long run versus the short run. And a lot of times this topic is kind of presented in a way that is really challenging for students to understand or even kind of give it proper gravity in terms of how they should approach it. So I've seen a lot of programs where the way it's presented is very fluidly and kind of intermingled throughout all of the discussions. And so I'm going to go ahead and take one of those examples that I've found, which is when we're talking about gasoline specifically. And the fact that our demand for gasoline tends to be more elastic in the long run, and understanding why that would be the case. So, um, quick review: when we say demand tends to be more elastic in the long run, what we're saying is that in the long run, I look more at the price to decide what quantity of gasoline I'm going to be demanding. As opposed to in the short run, the price goes up and I look at the price at the pump when I'm already there filling up. So my demand, I may begrudge the higher prices that I'm paying, but I'm not yet able to adjust in the short run. In the long run, it tends to be more elastic, and there are quite a few different kind of factors and ways to look at it and think about that. Um, so what we want to do first, make sure I've got everything in view here. Here we've got our short run and our long run picture. And so we have the more inelastic curve in the short run. And a good way to kind of think about this is still demand for gasoline in both examples. But the closer the line is to being a vertical line, like you would need to write the letter I, the closer it is to inelastic. And the perfectly vertical line you would need to write a letter I by just dotting it at the top or maybe putting the demand label at the top would be perfectly inelastic. And I believe previously we used an example with insulin, and we just kind of very quickly touched on that. But essentially, we know that the curve on the left over here is more inelastic because the line is more of a vertical up and down line, as opposed to over here that's more of a flat horizontal line. So more inelastic if it's vertical, more elastic if it's more horizontal. And that's just from visually looking at this. Now, we don't draw a demand curve and then make things fit it in the short run. The short run describes what that short run demand curve describes what we actually see. And that's because in the short run, we have to get to work. We still have to go to school. We have to do a lot of necessary things like go to the grocery store. But we do have some flexibility. We can maybe cut out a road trip. We can decide that a relaxing drive around town just to clear our head isn't necessarily the best way to go about accomplishing that goal. Um, and so those are things we can do if the price of gasoline increases as a way of adjusting or kind of acting on whatever elasticity there may be in our demand. In the long run, we could buy a completely different car that requires less gas, gets better gas mileage, an electric vehicle. We could end up adjusting our lives to where we could rely completely on public transportation. Or I've met people who live in places that I would not think biking is a realistic way of getting around a city, but I've people in a suburb commuting 40 miles regularly bike, and actually in a lot of cases, once they've built up that consistency, then given traffic, they're actually able to get there in the same amount of time, but much less stress and a lot healthier. So there are a lot more options we have to reduce our general demand for gasoline over the long run. In the short run, we're kind of taken by surprise by price increases. In the long run, we've seen gas prices increasing over time, and so more and more people are demanding electric cars, hybrid vehicles. Tesla is another good example of a demand that exists basically because of long run price changes, as well as, there are a lot of other factors when it comes to electric vehicles. So one question that comes up pretty frequently when I'm having tutoring sessions, and so I'd rather just talk about it and look at it before it's something that you're wondering about, and that is, how long does it take us to get to the long run? And that answer is always very relative. We're pretty much in the short run as long as there's a factor that we can't change. So if we've moved into an apartment and we don't like our roommates, in the short run, we can make some minor adjustments. We can try to negotiate. We can get a night shift so that we're never actually interacting. In the long run, we can get a different place to live. In the short run, the gas prices have gone up, so we still go to work and school, but we don't joyride around town and we don't take a road trip like we had planned. In the long run, we get an electric vehicle so that gas prices actually don't affect our decisions when it comes to things like road trips. In the short run, like I said, we get along with the roommate. In the long run, we sign a new apartment lease. In the short run, our business might need to close down for the day because we know with a major snowstorm or a major heat wave, we're not going to have customers walking by because it relies on foot traffic. So that's a short run business decision to maybe close down a coffee shop during a heat wave in an area that relies on foot traffic, or a pizza restaurant in the middle of a blizzard condition. But in the long run, if the business can't do well consistently, then they maybe need to move to a different location. Maybe they go out of business completely. And so typically in that context, I would look at the long run for a small business like that being that point when their lease comes up again, and the next decisions are they experience a period of time where none of their costs are fixed and all of the costs can be adjusted by changing something like getting a new lease or a new building. So that was just really a quick review and a quick discussion of the concept of the short run versus the long run, and focusing on common questions that I've received from students, as well as a common approach that a lot of textbooks and a lot of college programs will take that I believe tends to leave out this part of the discussion, and that is that it seriously depends on a lot of factors. And so the long run is almost an abstraction. The short run is what we do day to day. The long run is major changes, is when major changes can be made.